2, 1.
Welcome back to What's Your Geek? I'm Rob Dorgan, and this show is all about what I'm interested in, what you're interested in, what's fascinating and interesting in the role-playing game world, in the fantasy world. And today I have a special episode, but before I get into it, I just want you guys to know that I'm enjoying an original Ginger Brew Reads original. And the cool thing is about this is a ginger beer. It's non-alcoholic. It's very sweet, but not so sugary sweet. And it says here, before modern soft drink technology existed, non-alcoholic beverages were brewed at home directly from herbs, roots, spices, and fruits. So this guy or woman, or many people perhaps, are going back to that old style of brewing, and I really enjoy my original Ginger Brew Reads. So refreshing. Anyway, today's episode, I am doing something I've never done before. I am dedicating this episode to a man that I think is really cool, really awesome. If you're at all involved on Twitter or social media, you would know him as Alpha Stream. I know him in real life as Teos. He lives a few hours south of me. I've seen him at conventions here or there. He's a big convention goer. He actually has written some convention adventure modules for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons and for 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons. And the reason I am giving a shout out to Teos is because he is someone who I find really supports the community. He really is supportive of diverse and inclusive views. He promotes my videos when I post these on YouTube, when I do some Twitter stuff. He'll send that, he'll retweet it and post it and stuff like that. And I really appreciate that. And it's not just for me. I see him do it for other people. And I think that the community is best when we respect people from all different races, cultures, religions, beliefs, backgrounds, because to me diversity is really strength. And if you do any kind of research into biology and into evolution and things like that, you'll find out that diversity is like a core fundamental. I mean, the whole reason, not the whole reason, but a part of the reason like incest is taboo, right? It's not natural. Think about this. Why is something taboo and also illegal? It's because we really want to make sure no one is doing it. And let's just say that, but is it illegal to eat your own feces? I mean, is it taboo? Yeah, probably taboo a little bit, but illegal? I don't know. But who's going to do that, right? The chances of that happening are pretty minor. But you look at incest, right? That's having sex with a member of your family, like direct related, like mom, sister, brother, right? I think even first cousins. It's illegal to marry them. And why is that? Is that because people are so against it? But we have to, because that kind of stuff happens, right? Look back in the Middle Ages and stuff. People were inbreeding. Look at the Game of Thrones, right? Perfect example. Jaime Lannister, his sister, having kids, I think it would have been a lot better if, like, Joffrey was literally retarded. Like, if he came out and was like that. I can say that. I have Asperger's, so I can make fun of retards and retardation because I can include myself as one. So it's not offensive because I'm saying it, and I have Asperger's, and I'm on the autism scale. Like, and then there's people on one end of the scale that do that. I'm not making fun of them. I'm just saying that's real. I've met some. Anyway, I'm getting a little far off field. Again, the Asperger's. But my point is, in terms of diversity, it's such a huge, important topic that I'm having a little fun, going a little strange in my opening. But the reason I'm bringing it up is recently I was listening to Dragon Talk, which is the Wizards of the Coast official Dungeons & Dragons podcast. It's done at Wizards of the Coast. And they had a woman on there named Tanya DePass, and she is part of a company called I Need Diverse Games. And I thought it was a really good interview, and I thought it was an important one, talking about diversity. And typically, gamers, you think of the white male gamer. It's the vast majority from what I can gather. And if you go to conventions, D&D conventions, that's what you're going to see there. And so I support diversity. I would like to get more women, more people of color, in their sexual orientations, different countries, all that kind of stuff would be cool. But the one thing that kind of slightly had me concerned was, and it's not verbatim, but saying something about there, I believe I heard her say something about talking to other people. Like basically if I'm a white person, so if I see a black person at the gaming table, maybe I can ask them, are you uncomfortable that I'm playing a drow? Do you find that offensive? Because the drow are dark elves and they're all like supposed to be bad and evil, except for, Dritz Durden or whatever. But my concern is that gamers it's diversity is such a sensitive issue. Just to say to someone, oh, go talk to someone of color, or go talk to, like, if you're straight, talk to a gay person about what that's like. It's such a broad label that I feel like someone could inadvertently really step into it and really make some serious faux pas. And when I was in school, there's this really cool book I read called "Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria?" and it is by Dr. Beverly Tatum. And among really good points she had in there is that if you are a white person and you have any sort of white guilt, don't go talk to someone of color to get over your white guilt. Talk to other white people who may also have that problem and work through that issue, right? Work through that issue in your community, I don't mean community, I mean with other people, right? If you're a black person and you have issues around racism and prejudice, like, work through that, right? And then when you can get some level of, like, understanding and awareness of yourself, and then you can start having that dialogue. But if you just randomly go off and say, oh, I'm going to talk to whoever about whatever, you can inadvertently step in it and just make a mistake. And so it's such a big issue. I don't think I can really do full justice to it or give you the best advice, except reading the book is an awesome thing. Like, one of the big points it makes in the book is that there's unconscious racism. Like, they did a study where a blind study, so people didn't know it, and they basically took a resume that was identical. The only thing that was different, it was one resume was for a white person, one was for a person of color, and they gave, I think in this case it was a black person, and they gave their resumes to these reviewers. And in one case, they told the reviewers, oh, this is a person that would be reporting underneath you, like someone you would be above in the hierarchy of the organization. And generally the reviewers gave the resumes pretty equal remarks, right? Pretty equal ratings. Then they did it where they gave the reviewers a resume, again, just white and black person, and they said, oh, this is someone who's going to be a peer with you, right? And the reviewers gave statistically significant higher marks to the white person. Then they did it where they said this person is going to be above you, someone to be your boss, or at least above you in the organization, in the hierarchy. And they gave the white person significantly more high marks, right? And these are people, when they were told about this whole thing, were shocked at their own behavior. Like, they were unconscious to it. But if you think about it, we get so many messages, right? Night is black and dark and scary, and white is the sunlight, and the cowboys and the stereotypical westerns wear the white hats, and the black, hat cowboys are the bad guys. So there's a lot of messages, right? Even in Dungeons and Dragons, right? The drow, the evil drow, they're the dark elves, and they're also matriarchs, right? So society's run by women and people of dark skin, like bad, bad, bad. So my point is, we get a lot of unconscious messages, and if we're not careful and don't really unpack these and think about them, we're subject to acting these out in our own lives unconsciously. And another example is, I could basically go, look at an apartment and try to rent it because I'm white. Maybe I get the apartment. Maybe I don't know, an hour before me, there's an Asian person there that tried to rent the apartment, and the landlord didn't rent to them. And maybe the landlord just thought oh, their credit wasn't quite as good or something. But perhaps it was unconsciously they were just racist, right? And so her point was, in this book, why are all the black kids sitting together in the cafeteria, is if you're not actively fighting against something like racism, then and you're like a white person, so then you're actually benefiting from it. And I remember when I first read that book, I was so taken by it. I really wanted to, do something, but I didn't quite know what to do, right? And so I think this is a small part of me doing something, talking about diversity, saying it is an important issue, it is something to bring up, and it comes in all manners of ways. Because even though I'm a white person, I have Asperger's, so I have a different neurological, way of thinking and functioning in my brain that affects me significantly, So, but then again, I can sort of pass off and come across as, as the typical, white male, in short, contain social interactions. But in terms of my overall career, in terms of being married, those are areas where that kind of diversity comes out. But it also makes me much more passionate and interested in diversity. And I think we all should be, because it can really bring a lot more vibrancy and fun and things of interest to the table when you're more open to diversity. And yet we sort of commonly band around each other. And I think one of the biggest examples I got of this, one of the few games I think that I've ever played that I was questioning whether it was really a good thing to do was Grand Theft Auto. I mean, the fun part of that game is they create such amazing open worlds that I could literally at one point drive my car around, this fantasy world, basically. I think it was Miami, and know where I was going as much as I could drive around a city I lived in. But I remember they came out with, I think it was Grand Theft Auto 4, and the protagonist was a black person. And I remember when I first started playing, I was like, oh, I can't quite relate as much to this guy. But the irony is, in Grand Theft Auto 3, the guy was like, I think like an Italian, or I mean, basically, I didn't have a lot in common with him, right? But when they made the protagonist a black person, I was like, oh, I have like less in common, and because I'm playing this game to sort of escape, I was kind of like, oh, it's going to take a little more effort of me to try to escape in this world. But then the thought occurred to me, oh my God, like how many video games are out there and computer games where a person is the main character is someone who's white, right? And I can relate to them. And if I wasn't, and yet if I was like a black person or Asian or some other, or a woman, and how much less do I see myself reflected in the world, right? In this one example, this one game, I was like, oh, I'm not quite as reflected. And then I thought to myself, what if my whole life was like that? What if the majority of my life was like that, right? What if my examples, I mean, it's a little bit different now, right? We did have Obama as president for a while, but that's no longer the case, unfortunately. And I think that, these advances and these strides we make, they're not like solid. Oh, look, like we've gotten women the right to vote. Oh, look, black people aren't slaves. It's not like we suddenly have solved everything and everything's good. And sometimes living in a very liberal city, one can become a nerd to that or think like all the problems are solved. But I think as we look around the country, particularly today and the things that are going on, we can see that there's still a lot of problems with diversity, a lot of problems with equality, and there's a lot more work to be done. And I think it's a really important issue, and I think it arrives and comes up everywhere. And so I just wanted to acknowledge it in the gaming world, at the gaming table, And I'm not saying to go out and, find other people to play with because all your friends, oh my God, everyone I play with is a white male. Like, that could be a problem, right? If that's all you ever expose yourself and ever do. But I'm just saying, have some empathy, have some awareness, but don't just randomly go off to someone because they're different and say, oh, can I talk to you about your difference? Really work through your own issues to get to a better place through it. And that's what I got to say today. So please go out and like my channel, like me, give me some comments. If you don't like what I'm saying, if you disagree, well, put that in the comments too, and tell your friends, tell your family. If there's something you want to hear about, by all the means, please go and tell me what it is. I would love to talk about what you're interested in, what your latest geek is. We can get into things farther afield than this, and I hope you had a good time and have a lovely evening. And in the meantime, roll a 20.